What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Big Five Pod, episode number 131, as we continue with our conference preview week, our team preview week of all the teams in the Big Five. I'm, of course, your co-host, Kyle Morello. Next to me, co-host Jake Kopstick. And we're going to have a guest on here pretty soon, Luke Taylor, the Full Court Network, going to help us break down Temple basketball and the American. And his second year doing that for us in our conference previews and team previews. But Cope, first and foremost, how you doing?
Fantastic, Kyle. 5 days until college basketball returns on the night of this recording. I almost want to put I almost want to put my nice clothes out that I'm gonna wear to St. Joe's Lafayette like it's the first day of school.
I was about to say you're gonna lay him out in your bed like you're gonna like first day of school.
Yeah, I'm gonna lay out something nice on the bed because I can't wait to go. But we're getting closer. There's been exhibitions for us to eat up. LaSalle played Ursinus on the night of this recording in an exhibition, but we were not able to go because we were recording this here episode. So
that's right.
It is on the horizon. I'm going to try to catch the clips of that. Maybe some Drexel. Maybe some
LaSalle won by like 30. Which
but
isn't
still
surprising. But
just give me basketball, dude. Give me games. I want to try and catch some snippets of the exhibitions and the scrimmages on Synergy. So we are painstakingly close. Not in a bad way, but we're right there. Feels good.
We're almost there. Shout out to Ursinus, by the way, very local to Cope and I in Montgomery County. Definitely, glad that they got to go down to Glacier and play LaSalle. That was pretty cool. Also, shout out to
Steve Rice.
Yes, I was going to say Steve Rice, our friend Kevin Rice's dad, who is a volunteer assistant coach for them. So I know he was there. I know Kevin was there, some of our friends. So shout out to them. And then, of course, just while we're on the topic of Collegeville, shout out to Collegeville Bakery because they're great. Great food, great people. Yeah. Could not give a shout out to Collegeville Bakery. So there's that. But before we get into our breakdown of Temple and the American with Luke Taylor, of course, the reason why you only see two of us right now is because we got some quick hitters to get to. So, Cope, get that ball. We're going to get to your quick hitters. I am going to steal the spotlight first, though. I have something that I'm going to quick hit first. It's a little more of a sad note, but you see this jersey I got on. This is my first time wearing this. I just ordered it. And you see the numbers here.
Oh, man, I didn't realize that was a Mangold jersey.
Yes, it's a Nick Mangold jersey. I ordered it on Sunday right after the unfortunate news of his passing at the age of 41 due to a chronic kidney condition that he had, I think, since his college days at Ohio State. But Nick Mangold was one of my favorite players growing up as a Jets fan, as a young Jets fan when they were actually good and did things, and he was a big part of that. Being drafted in 2006 or 2005, 2006, whatever it was, and helping lead the Jets offensive line to 2 straight AFC championship games. A lot of great moments in my childhood, but obviously you remember an offensive lineman because one of how good they were, and he was dominant. He was arguably the best center in the league at the time. But number two, because he was seemingly, and of course I didn't know him, but seemingly an awesome dude, a great leader. He kind of exemplified everything it was to be a New York Jet, especially at that time when people were proud to be a New York Jet. So it was, definitely a little emotional on Sunday hearing that, a little bit now too, just thinking about it, because when you have, someone who was one of your favorite players and something like this tragically happens to them, someone who's a family and everything, it's sad. So as soon as that broke, I had a Fanatics gift card that was outstanding and been waiting for something to use it on, was hoping it was for a Knicks conference championship appearance last year, but this is something even better to use it for. So shout out to Nick Mangold, the GOAT, and that's why I'm wearing this jersey today. And the Jets also did get their first one of the season for him on Sunday, which was pretty cool. I wish it didn't take 7 games, but so just want to do that first real quick before we get into quick hitters. Not to start in a somber note, we got a lot of basketball to talk about, but I could not, as a Jets fan and a Nick Mangold fan, go without saying that. So, Cope, grab that ball. Let's get going.
Very, very eloquently said by you. All the tributes everybody was doing for Nick Mangold Sunday were terrific. And I don't know, I just think it's funny, man. The Jets, in the midst of a losing streak, they don't look very good. They go to Nick Mangold's home state in Ohio, where he didn't grow up too far from that stadium. I don't know. Sports is a funny thing, man.
It's poetic.
It's a funny thing. Yeah, I remember him like that. I forget what commercial was it. Was it Pepsi or Bud Light? Like somebody goes to the gas station, they open up the fridge, and he's in there like squatted down, ready to snap the can to him.
I mean, in his Ring of Honor, in his Jets Ring of Honor ceremony, he cracked a Bud Light and cheered it with everyone, and then after drank, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
one of a kind.
What a guy.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, Kyle, I am going to start quick hitters here because we had an unfortunate passing today. The Temple athletics community had an unfortunate passing today, and that would be the longtime voice of the Temple Owls, not just for football, but for men's basketball for the parts of 5 decades. That would be Harry Donahue, who unfortunately passed away on the day of this recording, October the 29th. Long time, he was the voice and the broadcaster for not only football games on the radio. He did men's basketball. He did play-by-play when the Owls were ranked number 1. He worked for KYW. He worked for Channel 17. Guy was a staple in the broadcasting community for Temple, of course, in its 2 flagship sports in football and basketball here. Very, very unfortunate right before the season too. But yeah, not just for Temple. I mean, he was on TV, he was on KYW on the radio, like a very recognizable voice for a lot of people's drives in the last many years in as far as the Temple sports scene goes. But he was inducted into the Temple Basketball Ring of Honor in 2020, Pennsylvania Sports Hall of Fame in 2000. So unfortunate, Kyle. I was hoping to lead in with something a little more positive after that, but important that even if it's unfortunate when this stuff happened, it's important that we honor these people.
Absolutely.
Staples of the sports scene and the Big Five. So rest in peace to Harry Donahue, who passed away just today, October the 29th. Kyle, given that this is a Temple episode and we're going to have LT on a Full Court Network to preview the American Conference, not the American Athletic Conference, not the AAC, the American or the American Conference. All the quick hitters have to do with Temple, so just going to knock a couple out of the way while it's relevant and it's on the topic. One coaching piece here. How about this, Kyle? Temple hiring former Villanova national champion Demir Cosby Roundtree as their director of player development. He comes over from the Brooklyn Nets, where he served as a video assistant. Played at Villanova from 2017 to 2022 after a very good high school career at Newman Goretti. Injuries derailed this guy's career. He was a freshman on that 2018 national championship team. And then I remember that year they made the Final Four. I think they were just going to make him like an assistant, basically. They were going to almost make him like a student coach just because injury, like he would not really get cleared. And then it came out like as it was progressing and he felt good enough to practice, he would go practice and he'd play. And it just kind of became like a game-by-game basis on if he could get in there and give him some depth and give him another big guy. And I went to go see Villanova play in the Jimmy V Classic against Syracuse with Boeheim at the Garden right after I saw Texas Tech and Tennessee play a game where I think they scored 120 points in like a double overtime game. It was crazy. I'm getting off topic, but I saw 2 wild games at Madison Square Garden where there was a stretch in that Texas Tech Tennessee game where there was 9 minutes without a field goal scored, and the field goal that broke that streak was a goaltend. I saw a rock fight, and then I saw this Villanova team played. But point being, they bring him in. And here's Demir Cosby Roundtree. It's like, maybe he's feeling great. Maybe he's not. He can only play on a game-by-game basis. Comes in on a free throw. There's a missed free throw. First thing this guy does is dive on the floor, even when it comes out about his durability and everything. Crazy. But part of 2 Final Fours and the national champion in 2018. And Kyle, he's taking over for Khalif Wyatt, who's going to the Long Island Nets to be a video coordinator and a player and serve in a player development position. So basically Temple and the Brooklyn Nets organization as a whole are kind of making a trade here. But Demir Cosby Roundtree looked a little funny, Kyle, we'll say, in the staff picture wearing cherry and white. Not used to that. But the latest member of the Temple coaching staff, Demir Cosby Roundtree, Philadelphia native. Kyle, one quick recruiting piece here. This is old news, but it was important to mention this because we've mentioned high school recruits for Drexel, for Penn in the past. I want to throw this in there as well. How about a commitment for Temple in the class of 2026? 3-star guard Derek Morton Rivera from Father Judge. And how about this, Kyle? The Catholic League champion.
That's right.
The Catholic League champions, Father Judge. He committed to Temple, 3-star guard in the class of 2026, offers from South Florida, LaSalle, Richmond, Towson, St. Bonaventure, Albany, a team in Temple's conference, a local team in LaSalle, Richmond. Chris Mooney's got ties here. Pat Scarry at Towson's come up here and recruited very well in this area. Albany with Dwayne Killings. A lot of people connected to this area really wanted this guy, Kyle. Part of the Catholic League champs, can shoot it at 6'3". Really nice player and a really nice kid. This is a priority get for Adam Fisher and Temple. I saw pictures. Basically, one of Bill Courtney's first assignments was to go to the six-man center where there was some live periods and watch this guy play and end up bagging him. So, yeah, Derek Ward Rivera. Look, knock on wood, because there's no national letters of intent to be signed. Nothing is for certain at this point. We don't know. But he is committed to Temple for the class of 2026. Lastly, Kyle, some former player news, I guess. Former Temple forward Elijah Gray dismissed from Wisconsin yesterday. Day of this recording is the 29th. Yesterday, the 28th, he was dismissed from the Wisconsin Badgers. And the only reason they gave was, in quotes, events preceding his enrollment at UW-Madison. So, could that mean something at Temple? Sure. Could that mean something at Fordham, who in their own right, I mean, you know about the Temple gambling scandal and everything. Fordham had a scandal with giving improper benefits to recruits and student athletes. Ultimately, at the end, with the not-so-great year last year, it did cost Keith Ergo his job after he was suspended for a couple games as well. Maybe not the nail in the coffin, but probably something that didn't help. They had to forfeit over a fine, which included 2% of the men's basketball budget because of those recruiting violations. So he was dismissed from the team. Why? There hasn't been a reason set out yet. People can jump to their own conclusions, but that's the bottom line. There was a lot of people making conclusions on Twitter yesterday, given the gambling scandal at Temple that, as far as we know, Elijah Gray was not a part of because he was on the team the year after. But
that's Twitter for you.
The only facts we have now, he was dismissed from Wisconsin due to, again, in quotes, events preceding his enrollment at UW-Madison. If there's more details, we will update you, but that is all we have at this time. Anyway, Kyle, let's talk Temple.
Let's talk Temple basketball, Cope. And to do that, let's bring in Luke Taylor from Full Court Network. Here's Luke. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as promised, we have Luke Taylor from the Full Court Network here with us once again this year to talk about the American Conference, not the AAC like it was last year, of course, but the American Conference and specifically the Temple Owls. Luke, great to see you again. How's it going?
Yeah, great, man. Thanks for having me. I always love seeing you guys and talking some basketball.
Absolutely. And as you said when you were joining, it seems like it's basketball season. So we're excited to have you back for another year talking about the American and another year talking about Temple basketball, year 3 of the Adam Fisher era.
Yep.
Been, some ups and downs. Obviously, the not so great year in year 1, but then the surprise run to the American Finals, falling short to UAB last year, an up and down year as well, kind of marred by injury.
Yep.
What are your expectations now for this year with, the amount of roster turnover, which we'll get into a little bit, but that another year on campus, another year recruiting. What's your expectations for Temple in year 3?
I think he just has to keep progressing. I mean, first year was 16-20. I think last year was 17-15. I mean, he's got to just keep going. He's got to get 20 plus wins. Big thing is you got to stay healthy. He's got a couple returning players. I mean, he's a great coach, great guy. I actually reached out to him to kind of get some skinny or some fat or some juice. And I said, what's going on? He's like, I'm good. Basketball starts next week. Okay. That's all I got from him for you.
It's locked in.
Thanks, Fish. No, but he's a great guy. I mean, he's very personable. He gets it. He's Philly through and through. I think it's just he's got to stay healthy and he's just got to continue. I really don't know what Temple's NIL is. I mean, that's the name of the game for every team is, the teams that are going to be competing at the highest level, unfortunately, have more money. So, last year he had some players. It was just a weird year from last year, like really just strange. With the kind of this, a little bit of the scandal, nothing to do with him. Then the injuries. I mean, he had some. I mean, Jamal Mashburn Jr. is just a ball player, but I don't know. I will tell you the one guy I like. There's two guys I really like. Darian Ford from Arkansas State. I know we're going to go touch on another school that he played for, the head coach. He's a sneaky player, but the guy I really like, and I think he's going to surprise a lot of people in the American, is AJ Smith from Charleston. Averaged 11.5 points a game, and then he came from Citadel and he averaged about 16. I think he's going to be a really nice player in the American, but it's just hard. They have these previews, and every coach we've ever talked to about preview shows and preseason rankings and all this stuff, the guy who usually wins Player of the Year, and especially in this conference, is the best player returning. I mean, that's the truth. In this conference, a lot of guys don't return. This year, more so than ever, it seems like you're getting a lot of retention, which is nice.
Yeah, years past, here's the thing. You look at Memphis, like UAB would bring a couple guys back. Memphis is usually a turnover year to year. This Temple team has been a turnover the 2 years that Fisher's been there, and even in his first year. But LT, the thing you bring up with the injuries, my thing with Temple was last year that just kept me wanting more. It's just that it never came together.
No,
this team never came together.
No,
Lynn Greer never got out there. They had the talent. When you came on with us last year, LT, I said if there was a team that was going to sport outside the top five that was going to break their way in, it was going to be this Temple team.
Yep.
The guard depth that they had on paper, in theory, was great. And then there was a suspension to Lynn Greer. He sits out the first handful of games, really doesn't come back until right before conference play. Then he steps away from the team, and then he just stepped away from the team in totality. Yep. So we never got to see him mesh with Jamal Mashburn, who at one point, the only person that was scoring more points than him was Eric Dixon from right down the street.
Yep.
He gets hurt. He seldom plays the rest of the year, and unfortunately he's in a walking boot for most of the second half of conference play. Jameel Brown coming in from Penn State, I thought was going to be an awesome shooter who played for Adam Fisher at Penn State. That never materialized. He only played in a handful of games, and he left the team. This team just never came together. It felt like we had the ingredients to bake a cake, and we just never put them in the bowl and put them together and put the thing in the oven. So
and then Barry look at Barry. Barry transferred to Memphis.
Yeah, he leaves. Which, by the way, the second year in a row that Memphis has taken a player off of their team, with Jourdain the year previously, and he had some injury issues in his own right, and he didn't play in the conference tournament, and he was banged up and missed some games. They were just gutted. They had some games where it was like the Zion Stanford show, simply because they were running out of bodies.
Yeah.
So that was what was unfortunate. So are they going to have to stay healthy? Yes. Now I look at this team, and there's players here, and there's some reclamation projects, and there's some guys that are transferring down. I don't believe they have the sheer talent that they maybe did last year. But I want to touch on one guy you brought up, and that's Darian Ford. And I'll bring up another guy who's kind of got the same high school pedigree as him. If we're just going to get into guys I think are really going to make or break the year for him, he's one of them.
Yep.
Good year at Arkansas State. Two good ones, really, at Arkansas State and Jonesboro for Brian Hodgson, who we'll touch on a little later. But just a physical, a very well-built guy who's got some scoring ability, was on a really good team last year. Showed that he can be on a team where there's other options and play off of other people. He's going to be big. Another guy who was also a top 100 recruit. People may forget that Darian Ford once upon a time was a top 100 recruit, Arkansas State Player of the Year. Went to Arkansas to play for Eric Musselman, then left to go to Arkansas State in state to play for Hodgson. But Gavin Griffiths as well is going to have to be big. 6'8", you haven't seen the shooting. He's only a 27.5% three-point shooter through his 2 years in college, with the one at Rutgers and last year at Nebraska. There's been some injuries that kind of derailed his season last year, making him kind of fall out of favor there just because he wasn't on the court. So I see him coming down a level. This is a really good spot for him. He should be featured some more. He'll have opportunities to shoot. I don't think he's a 27.5 three-point shooter. I think that number certainly goes up when we see it this year, but he'll have more freedom to score, more freedom to play. A step down for him, I think, is a really good spot. But LT, I look at those two guys with that top 100 pedigree, with that hype coming out of high school. and you just haven't seen it yet for one reason or another. Darian Ford loaded Arkansas team that had 3 guys get drafted with Anthony Black and Nick Smith, notably. And then he goes to Arkansas State. He's on some really good teams. There was just other guys there, some of which followed Brian Hodgson to South Florida and are going to be playing for him. So I see those 2 guys. It's a great spot for them with the pedigree they have. I think it's a really good spot for them to showcase what we maybe haven't seen at the previous other stops.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing, what we've learned with especially Full Court Press, the college basketball coaches show, is, everything can look on paper, you've got all the right ingredients. It's just not ready to like gel or bake or whatever, as you put in together. It's like they've got all the right ingredients and you think it's going to start, but then, it's such a short window. I mean, some of these team players are only together for 9 months and then they're gone. And it's really hard to build, chemistry and culture. And I mean, and a lot of coaches are really trying to be hyper aggressive on building that very soon and quickly. But sometimes it just doesn't mesh. We've talked to coaches where they said we just got bad fits. We went wrong in the transfer portal. And that could have been the case with Temple last year, on top of, injuries and Lynn Greer and what have you. But they're preseason ranked number 9. I hope they do better than that. There's a lot of question marks in the conference when you look at it. I mean, who knows about Wichita State? Who knows about UAB? Who knows about Florida Atlantic? Tulsa? I mean, there's a lot of what ifs. There's a lot of question marks in the middle, to top of this conference. So, I mean, if Temple can just peak at the right time, I mean, you just never know. Fisher's a great coach.
He certainly is.
I want to touch on like that just with so much new here. I mean, I feel like you look at this league, I feel like in the Atlantic 10 you can actually get some retention. But I feel like this league especially, and then we just had our guy Riley Frayne on to talk about the CAA. Like that league gets completely gutted every year. All the best players are gone. They are it is a wash just about every year in some of these leagues. So, sure, Temple's at preseason number 9, but it's just so hard to rank everybody.
You don't know. Yeah,
it's so hard to rank everybody. And then you look at like you have Hodgson, like you have Daniel Robinson at North Texas, who we'll talk about. You just have so much newness. It's preseason, like it's nice to have. It's a talking point and everything, but like it's worthless in this day and age, in this conference, especially with so much newness. I'm going to touch on one guy I think can really be maybe not even a huge big-time scorer for this team, but somebody that's really going to help. That's Jemai Felt, who they brought in from Bowling Green. Yeah. Michael Huger actually recruited this guy while he was there. This is his 4th year of college he's going into, but he's only played 1. So he's a redshirt sophomore, but he was MAC golf freshman last year, even in his 3rd year with a redshirt and an injury. Almost 1.5 blocks a game. And you look at some of his numbers. LT, we're big Ken Pom guys, so I'm going to pump up Ken Pom a little bit. I actually need to renew my subscription fairly soon here. But if we look at at the national ranks and stuff like that, 2nd in the MAC in block percentage in his 1st year playing, 1st in free throw rate, top 10 in both in rebounding on both ends, and number 1 in effective field goal percentage and true shooting. Mostly because this guy didn't take too many shots outside the paint. At all. But look, the point being here with Jemai Felt, all those numbers are great. He is very much needed on this team. If we look at the defensive numbers for Temple last year, 183 in 2-point percentage, 175 in block percentage. This wasn't a big team at all last year, which will help as well. They just didn't have many bodies after the true freshman of Babatunde Dorodola. Elijah Gray, he didn't play very much to start the year with an injury. So there just wasn't that many bodies. That's a guy I think is going to step in on the defensive end. 253 overall in defense, 311 in turnover rate. You look at some of these metrics, LT, and was not the strong suit of this Temple team last year. They had some guys that could score. Defensively was kind of where they were short. There was some shortcomings, and I think that's because they didn't have much size. So even if he doesn't pour in 20 a game, Jemai Felt, length, athleticism, protect the rim, lob threat, There's a lot of things he can bring to the team, and I think can help fill gaps that maybe they didn't have last year.
Yeah, and I think that's what Fisher did. I think he tried to figure out where his gaps and holes were, and I think with Felt he did that, and a couple other players. So, who knows? I mean, I think everybody's trying to figure out the pieces each year now, and it's every May. I mean, March, April, May is like who's coming, who's going, and it's the speed dating. I mean, I will tell you, 2 years ago, I think the American was the most gutted conference of any conference. They had one, I think Yaxel came back. Now he's gone. He graduated and he's gone to Michigan, but he was the only returning player on their all, second or third, team, all American teams that came back. So what does that tell you? It's good basketball.
It's good basketball. It's a tough league.
Yep.
It's a tough league. So, I want to mention a couple other guys, LT, and then I want to kick it to you. And Kyle, you can obviously give your piece as well and some other guys to look out for. But one theme about this team. Maybe they didn't shoot the lights out. You know what they did do? They got to the free throw line. In terms of their point distribution, second in America in points coming from the free throw line. Now, trivia question for you both. Who was number one?
Temple was 2 free throws.
Temple was 2. All right, hint. Their team colors are the ones that Kyle's wearing. Those ugly Jets colors.
All right, now.
It's not Colgate.
No.
Manhattan?
No.
Ooh, that's a good one. Oh, Michigan State.
It is not Michigan State. One more guess. One more guess, and for the sake of time, we'll get us out of here.
It's not North Texas.
I was thinking North Texas, but no.
No, that's like more of a neon green.
Yeah.
Great green, by the way. The court they have is awesome.
It's great. I love the green. Yeah. All right, green. Well, it's not South Florida because they have electric green too. It's going to be, he's going to get, it's like OU probably or something like that, Ohio University, but it's not.
It is Charlotte. The Charlotte 49ers, the highest percentage of their points came from the free throw line. So a conference foe in Temple, but point being here, that the Temple Owls last year second in terms of their percentage coming from the free throw line. And you look at who they added. A.J. Smith, who you just brought up, LT, a good guy getting to the free throw line. A guy who I think is very much going to thrive in this system and help with the rebounding deficiencies that they have is Messiah Gilliard, who comes in from Manhattan. He is a 6'3" guard. He had the 63rd best offensive rebound percentage last year. Over 7 rebounds, he grabbed the game as a 6'3" guard. You won't see many other guys at that height do that, maybe ever. But physicality, grabbing rebounds, and then guess what? As far as the MAC conference goes, this guy was 4th in terms of free throw rate, 14th in fouls drawn and getting to the line. So this team is going to have guys that are going to get downhill. Even the freshman they brought in, Cam Wallace, I think is another guy that can do that. But Jordan Mason at the point guard spot, some nice size at 6'2". I like what this team has as far as getting to the rim. We'll see where that shooting comes from. But if they want to do that, you want to put a pressure on the officials, this team's going to get to the rim once again. They brought in plenty of guys that are going to do that and keep that up. But Messiah Gilliard, swagger, has an edge to him, rebounding, which at the guard, even at the guard spot and at 6'3" is going to help big time, where that was another shortcoming last year. If we want to look at Temple rebounding wise, fellas, while we're at it. 255 in defensive rebounding percentage. Even as a 6'3" guard, I think Messiah Gilliard is going to help in that department. So get to the rim, need to improve rebound. They got more size. I like what Temple did here, but I think Messiah Gilliard is a guy you need to look out for.
Yeah.
Hope I've got a guy for shooting, if you don't mind. CJ Hines. Another addition who I think can be good for this team. And he's a forward, so a little bigger, can stretch the floor a little bit. But the SWAC 20 MVP this past season at Alabama State, 14 points a game, shot just under 38% from 3, a little under 42% from the field. So, a little bit to the left desired on the 2-point shot, but 50% effective field goal percentage as well. You talk about them maybe lacking shooting a little bit, but that's a guy who can maybe stretch the floor a little bit. Guys has some experience there, obviously being a senior. He's in his 5th year, did 2 years at JUCO. So another guy who can just add to this mix of players. And like you both said, this is a team that, maybe they don't have the top end star talent that they did last year with Jamal Mashburn and name recognition and Lynn Greer and all that, but they have some guys who quietly, this can be a good team with depth, which I think is important. Where they'll, finish in the American, we'll see it necessarily. I know you said, Luke, that they were picked 9th in the coaches poll. Ken Pom has them at 7th behind Wichita State and ahead of Tulsa, and finishing at 9-9 in the conference, which I think that's probably a fair assumption. Yeah. Like we've all said, and Cope and I have said on these previews so far this week, that predictions are predictions.
Yep.
We don't know. There's a lot of unknowns, especially with transfers and everything. But I think that's a fair assessment of kind of the talent that this team has collected. But I think there's upside there.
Yeah. And I actually like their non-conference schedule. It's kind of interesting. LaSalle, Boston College, Hofstra, UCSD, so University of California, San Diego, which is a very good team. Villanova, Georgian Court. Hopefully they'll win that game. Hopefully, you see some of these, it's like the Biblical Science College of America. It's like, their starting center is 6'2.5", and he's 46 with 3 kids. Davidson at Princeton. So I do like their non-conference schedule.
And whoever they play in the Big Five.
And the Big Five, too. Yeah. So, I mean, it'll be interesting. I think it's challenging. So I think they'll have a good year. I mean, he should get, if he continues, I mean, he won 16 games his first year, 17 his second. He's got to win more than 18. He's got to win 20. And I think, if Ken Palm's saying 9-9, I mean, it's shit. That's what they were last year. They're 9-9, I believe. So, Ken Palm really went away from the variable of more or less than 9-9 then, huh?
I guess so. Their projected record right now, obviously without including, conference tournament games, 15-13. That's their projected record, 9-9, like you said, in conference. So, I think that's fair for right now. But like we both said, I think there's upside to this team. Is there anyone else that you guys want to touch on before we move on?
Yes, there's 2 guys we very much have to touch on. We talked about a bunch of transfers. I was
about to say the 2 returners. Yes, of course.
There's 2 guys coming back. Let's not forget about that. We get mixed up in all these new these new toys. So first of all, Aiden Tobiasen, very, very excited about this guy. And if there's LT, you being a former coach, if the sophomore leap from your freshman to your sophomore year is as big as people make it out to be,
absolutely,
Temple's going to be good. Aiden Tobiasen's going to have one. First team all freshman in the American last year, shot over 40% from 3. And he didn't play a whole lot, but he got in there, and I keep referencing the Villanova game. I know they got blown out in the Big 5 Classic down at now Xfinity Mobile Arena, but it was that game, continued to defend his tail off, had 5 steals. With his length, his size, gives you some positional versatility on the defensive end, on the offensive end, if you want to play bigger and not give up shooting. So Aiden Tobiasen, if this team's really good this year, I believe Aiden Tobiasen's going to have a big year to cause that. And then second, how about Baba Dorodola as well? The freshman, how about this? He reclassed. They brought him in young, started all 32 games he appeared in, top 10 in offensive rebound rate in this league, which they're going to need from him again. Just handled everything very well. Had to play a lot of minutes. And sure, maybe he got in foul trouble a little bit. But for a young player who's young, being a guy that reclassed and is younger than most traditional freshmen, to come in and have to man that starting spot in this league right away, did a very, very good job. So even though there's a bunch of transfers, we'd be totally remiss if we didn't mention those 2 guys. And with all these new guys, you do have some building blocks here and 2 hits as far as I'm concerned for freshmen that this staff brought in last year.
Yep. And that's huge that he retained them. I mean, especially in this league. I mean, that's a big pat on the back to Coach Fisher and his staff for retaining these 2 guys. And I think, they probably realized a good situation. They're going to step into a better situation their second year, and hopefully they'll reap the benefits by sticking around and playing a bigger role. That's the biggest thing. They're efficient in the roles they played.
Yeah, they were very, very good. And Cope, that Villanova game, I remember we were sitting there and going, Tobiasen, it was not a good game for Temple overall, but Tobiasen was showing something in that game, and Baba was solid all year. So adding those 2 to all the freshmen, not freshmen, to all the transfers that we talked about and some of the different pieces from different conferences, I think I think this team might mesh a little better than they did last season.
Yeah.
Of course, you won't, like I mentioned before too, you won't have maybe the one person to be like, I'm going to give you the ball and go get a bucket. I think it's probably going to be a little bit by committee at first. There's a few people, obviously, who can do that. I think Darian Ford probably right now is one of the leading candidates for that. But obviously, Mashburn was on another level, and now he's playing in the G League with the Knicks. But yeah, I think this team's going to mesh a little bit better this year. So we will see where they end up exactly. But let's talk about where everyone else in the conference will end up exactly too. I know we mentioned some teams here a little bit and where we think things will stand. Obviously, Memphis, once again, is the favorite in this conference, and for good reason. But shocker, I know. LT, besides Memphis, how do you see the rest of the, let's say, top 5 shaking out in the American?
I really like USF. I think they can make a run. I think what I really like about a couple teams, especially USF, is he's bringing in players that know the system. And he retained CJ Brown, who I think is going to be a stud and have a huge second year, 6'2" guard from Marietta, Georgia. He brought in a couple guys from Isaiah Nelson. He brought in from Arkansas State, Damian Collins from LSU, a couple of LSU transfers in the league. We also have Curtis Givens, the third from LSU at Memphis. I think USF is going to be really good. Hodgson is like a Nate Oates disciple. And you guys are going to like him. You're going to like this team at USF. It's going to be a lot like, what Coach Amir is building. The one that's kind of interesting, and I think if they would have retained Caleb Banks, who ended up transferring to DePaul, Tulane, they're bringing back 3 of their top 4 scorers. Preseason conference player of the year, Rowan Bromball is just a ball player. He led in 3 different categories, including scoring, assists, and steals. Asher Woods is a ball player. So, I'm really high on Ron Hunter and Tulane. And then the one that you really got to watch out for, because I actually got to see him in the flesh and we had him on the show, is North Texas. Daniel Robinson. He has trouble walking through screen doors. Really bad recruiting trip. But the one guy I want you to keep notice is Will McClendon from San Jose State. I saw him in the flesh last year, and he is a ball player. And he brought in, Horizon League Freshman of the Year, Conference USA Freshman of the Year. I think he's going to surprise people. I think North Texas is predicted to be 7th. So, I think there's going to be there's a couple teams that can maybe compete with Memphis. But did you know Memphis has 9 guys over 6'8"?
As they usually do, but it doesn't surprise me. Very physically imposing team as they usually do.
Jeez. They're all as tall as Anthony Hardaway on the sidelines.
It's ridiculous.
And that's LT. I'll get into Memphis real quick here, and then we can kind of go in on the rest of these guys. But when we sat here a year ago, I picked UAB to finish above Memphis. Why? Because I was just skeptical of what the experiment under Penny Hardaway looked like. It looked discombobulated early offensively. Yep. They were always good rebounding. They were always good defensively with the physically imposing, high pedigree guys that they had. But you proved me wrong last year because you said, hey, this team, they have Haggerty coming in. They have Tyrese Hunter with all the experience he has, and not just the college experience, but the tournament experience he had on an Iowa State team, on those Texas teams. And you proved me wrong. However, they get to the tournament. There's an injury to Tyrese Hunter, and they sputter to the finish line. So I'll give you that. This year, though, I'm right back to where I started. I look at these guys, Doug McDaniel, kind of a tethered past. It didn't work last year. They essentially traded guards with K-State, giving P.J. Haggerty to K-State and bringing Doug McDaniel in. I think this league he will do very well in. Mm-hmm. But just with what happened at Michigan and what happened at Kansas State last year, clashing with Tang, I don't love that. And then at the center spot, they lose Dane Danger, who was great last year. A massive, a load.
The oldest player in college basketball, just about.
Was he 37 and 4 kids? And
not bad, I guess, huh? Yeah, not bad of an older guy. But they have him. They have Nick Jourdain. They're gone. Now in is Aaron Bradshaw, who comes in with the past of his own. He's a big guy. He's from right over the bridge in Camden, New Jersey.
Yep.
He goes to Kentucky. It didn't work. He was playing behind people. And then he went to Ohio State, and he had an off-the-court issue, and he fell out of favor there. With all the noise this program has, LT, to bring in a guy that's got a bit of a past in Bradshaw, it worries me a little bit. Now, is the talent there? My God, it is, because he's 7'1" with airplane wing arms. And with him, with Hassan Abdul Rakim coming over from UT Rio Grande Valley, like there's big guys there. There is size there, as it always is. They have Tariq Ingram, another Philly guy coming over from Rider. He was a very, very late add. The size is there. The rebounding will be there, as it always is. It's always a very physically imposing team that has all the traits to make up a good defensive team. LT, I'm just worried about these guards with Doug McDaniel and the young Curtis Givens. I'll
give you a name. I'll give you a name that's going to make you sleep well at tonight. Sincere Parker from McNeese.
Well, here's the thing, LT. He got arrested in June. He's got a court date coming up.
Allegedly.
Here's the bottom line, LT.
That's my favorite word, allegedly.
Noise will forever follow this program as long as Penny Hardaway is a part of it. They just can't escape it. It is around them all the time. And I just don't know, with these guys coming in, some of which are unproven, with Bradshaw especially, and just with the past of Doug McDaniel, it worries me once again that I don't maybe see the talent and the proven pieces that I saw here last year. That's what worries me about Memphis. On paper, sheer talent, sure, this is probably the number one team in this league. You can write it in every year. But when you get into a season and they're going to play a hard non-conference schedule, and look, they were good last year, but again, they had proven people. They had way more proven pieces than this year. That worries me, LT. Now they're head and shoulders above the rest of the conference talent-wise, though. Yeah,
but I would say a lot of these teams have unproven. When you look at it, if you want to throw them, I mean, Anthony Hardaway's had 7 20-win seasons. And I mean, they're playing Ole Miss, Purdue, Baylor, Louisville, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State. I mean, they're opening against San Francisco, who could be, is a very good, WCC team and could, actually that's a Philly guy, Chris Gerlofson.
Right on.
And he said his dad was a terrible head coach. I think his dad coached at UMass maybe? Yeah. But he's a Philly guy. But, that's a team that's going to take a huge step. He retained some players. They're going to be really good. So, the thing with Memphis is he plays the toughest non-conference schedule of any, high major, even, Power 5 team. Listen, the guy, it's Anthony Hardaway. It's Penny. People know who he is. Okay. He's played at the highest level and was succeeded, and I think it's almost like this year's team is like Last Chance U. Remember that great series?
I was watching the other night.
Yeah. Last Chance U, man. Coach, Coach Howard follows us. But I think it's Ken Howard, Coach Ken Howard. But, I think, listen, there might be some bumps, but the talent is there. And if anybody, I feel like there's a lot of doubters with Anthony Hardaway. Are they going to win this? Are they going to go to the Sweet 16? Who knows? But man, I think Bradshaw's going to have a big year. I think Curtis Givens is going to have a big year. I think Sincere Parker is going to have a good year. Zachary Davis from I think it's South Carolina could have a good year. So who knows? Who knows?
And I look, here's the thing. Like, if Sincere Harris did not have legal issues, I would agree with you more. But the fact that, he got arrested, had a court date earlier this month, look, if he's reinstated, fine. But, if something happens with that or something comes about with that, then there's an issue. But I don't doubt that for a second. He's an absolute microwave dynamite scorer when he's in there. But again, It's just noise. It always follows this team. It will always follow the Memphis Tigers under Penny Hardaway. But talent-wise, it will always, always, always be there, LT. Yep. So, with that being said, LT, Kyle, I'm going to steal you. I'm going to steal your host hat for a minute here because I want to kick it to LT for this. Let's touch on South Florida, doing some recon for this season. I did listen to your podcast with Brian Hodgson. They're the talk of the town. We kind of know what Memphis is, even being a revolving door. We know they're going to bring in talent. Here comes USF, 2 years removed from winning this conference's regular season title. The unfortunate passing of Amir Abdur-Rahim last year. There's a new sheriff in town in Brian Hodgson, a rising star. I mean, one of the great young names where, quite frankly, LT, a couple good seasons here, and he's going to have a power conference job. And South Florida is going to be looking for another coach.
If he wants it, you don't. Yeah, he might stay.
It's not a bad look. Tampa, Florida is not a bad place to be, I guess.
No.
But talk to us. The South Florida Bulls, year one under Brian Hodgson, picked second in the preseason poll.
Yep.
What do you think?
I like I said earlier, CJ Brown is just a dynamo. 6'2" sophomore out of Marietta, Georgia, all conference freshman team. He started 23 games. I think he's going to take a big step. I like that he brought in players from Arkansas State. I think when you see that, the perfect example, and I'm not comparing him to Ben McCollum at Iowa or at Drake last year, he brought 4 or 5 guys, and look how well they did at Drake. And I think, bring in Isaiah Nelson, 6'10" beast from Arkansas State, Joseph Pinion, who played at Arkansas and was a teammate of Darren Ford, as was Nelson. I mean, he made 85 threes, last year. Damian Collins from LSU. I mean, he almost averaged 10 points a game. And then Xavier Brown from James Madison. I like what they put together. I like their non-conference schedule. It's going to be, there's a lot of great energy there. And I think when you have great energy off the court, it's going to come on the court. So, we're hoping to go down to the Memphis at USF game and see that in the flesh, because I think that's going to be just nuts. Nuts.
And right on. I agree with you. Bring in the Arkansas State guys. You bring in guys that, and guys that can score, and both Isaiah Nelson and Joseph Pinion. And then, hey, Xavier Brown was now, when me and Kyle hear Xavier Brown, we think of the St. Joe Xavier Brown, who's at Oklahoma now.
Yep.
But
Obviously.
Xavier Brown just spelled A-X-A, not with the Z after it, coming over from James Madison, another really good scorer.
Yep.
That was in the Sun Belt last year. And then, Damian Collins is huge. Like, just to get a guy that big, that athletic with the power conference experience. Like, and I think that's the one thing that is going to separate them. Is the size and the length and the athletes that they have will allow them to compete with some of these bigger schools as well. Also, just want to point out, I know Trilly Donovan released the all-name team, like he did his first team all-name team. I need to know why Onyx Nani was not on there.
I love that name.
Great name, Onyx Nani. There used to be an establishment in Philadelphia called Club Onyx, so I kind of laugh when I ever hear the name Onyx. But yeah, Kyle. Onyx Nani, Onyxnani. Need to know how.
Did not think a Club Onyx reference was going to make the pod tonight, but here we go.
I didn't want to say exactly what it was, so I had to use the word establishment to refer to Club Onyx.
I can only imagine what his parents' names are. The last name Nani. I'm not going to say it.
Maybe he's got some brothers. I know, they had all and always right on there. Maybe his brother. Maybe he's got some siblings that got a funny name.
His sister's name's Pearl. But listen, when I look at when a coach brings in players from a previous stop, it's like he's adding instant culture, and he's also bringing guys that are on the same page and kind of an extension of the coaching staff. I think that's huge. And I think what North Texas has done, I think he brought 3 or 4 guys. It's just going to pay off right off the bat. I think they're going to be clicking quicker. And, like a guy like CJ Brown, who came back, though different coaching staff, he's familiar. He knows this campus. He knows the school. He knows, the courts and the practice facilities. There's no I got to break into it. He's already ready to go. So I think that's going to be big for him.
Yeah, definitely. And LT, I do want to get back to something you mentioned earlier when we were talking about North Texas. I think they were probably predicted a little lower in the coaches poll than maybe what analytics say, because the KenPom and the American has them finishing tied for second with UAB at 11-7 in the conference and 88th overall in the country, which, I think you might got something there, because they were good last year. They were good the year before. Obviously with coaching change, but I think they're going to be right back there again in top 50 in defense. KenPom has them as. So what say you about North Texas?
I like Daniel Robinson, what he did at Cleveland State. It's going to be a fun style of basketball. We know Ross Hodge. He's a great guy, very defense oriented. I think you're going to see a little bit of shift from North Texas. I think their defense is still going to be good, but it's not going to be like a top 5 defense like it has been in the past. He's got guys that, can play ball. Curtis Stinson Jr. was Ohio Gatorade Player of the Year 2 years ago. Dylan Arnett, I got to see personally a couple times, 11.3, 7.1 at Cleveland State. And Cleveland State's a really, Horizon League's a really good conference. It doesn't get the notoriety it's gotten, but 2 years ago, you might have heard about Oakland beating Kentucky, and then Oakland also almost beating North Carolina State. I was in the flesh for both of those. Demarion Watson comes in from Iowa State. Like I said earlier, Will McClendon, who's going to surprise some people at San Jose State. So I think North Texas is not going to drop off. And I would be shocked if they finished out at like the top 3 or 4 in conference this year.
Fair enough.
Yeah, right on. And it's going to be tough to maintain that great defensive level when you don't have a Grant McCaslin disciple or Grant McCaslin himself on the sidelines. But yeah, right on with the LT. Will McClendon's going to have a big year. We've talked a lot about reclamation project, just guys who are top recruits who just, move down a level. He was at UCLA and he torn ACL kind of stunted his growth there. And then they brought in some really good guards and just never got off the ground for him. But he found a good spot at San Jose State under Tim Miles last year, and he comes over here. And again, if North Texas in a transition year is going to be good, it's because they've had a really good point guard to be the head of the snake for them. And Will McClendon could be that guy. All right, 2 other teams I want to talk to you about, LT. First is Florida Atlantic. Some guys are out the door. Look, John Jacobs in his second year. They played well last year, but hey, big one, and Bob Miller leaving. However, they bring in Devin Vanterpool comes back. They bring in some transfers. I want you to talk to us about Florida Atlantic, and then we'll get into Wichita State. I want to hear what you got to say about the Florida Atlantic Owls first. Then I'll get into Wichita.
I don't know. I mean, it's funny because both head coaches coached at Baylor together. John Jacobs and Paul Mills. They're both, I guess, Scott Drew disciples. I just don't know what to say about Florida Atlantic. I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, Dusty May built something great. He obviously went to Michigan. It's just, I really, Paul Mills is a great coach at Wichita State. Those are the 2 I struggle with. And even Tulsa too. Those are 3. It's like I look at their rosters, there's some good players coming in. But I just don't know if both those teams will be able to take that next step this year, just with the conference. I think there's just a lot of unknowns. I mean, I know we haven't talked about Tulane. They could surprise some people. They got 3 of their top 4 players coming back. I struggle with those 2, to be honest with you, Florida Atlantic and Wichita State, both really good coaches. But I'm just not seeing, like Wichita State, what was it, 2 years ago? Was just deadly, and then they lost everybody.
Tends to happen in this league.
They lost some really good players, like really, really good players.
I'm going to give you somebody on Florida Atlantic who I think is the potential to be one of the most important players like in this league. If this team is going to be good, it's because this guy had a massive, massive bounce back season from a year ago, and that's Cannon Carlisle at FAU being the starting point guard.
Ooh.
He was on that Indiana team that seemed to spend out the wazoo last year, and that team just really never came together. You had Omar Ballo inside, who was great, but I saw them play against Penn State at the Palestra when they came there, and they ended up winning, and Ballo had a good game. But the pieces just the guys they paid a lot of money to, even like a Miles Rice, who's going to be playing at Maryland now for Buzz Williams, like that team just. The idea of that team never came to fruition.
No.
And Cannon Carlisle was supposed to be a guy that came in and played a lot. 11.5 points a game at Stanford. He comes in last year, only makes 6 starts, averaged 4 points a game. This is an under 30% 3-point shooter.
Yep.
He just did not have a good season. But he's another guy, a top 100 recruit in the class of 2023, who's now on his 3rd stop, moving down a level from the Big Ten. Cannon Carlisle is a big-time swing piece here. Not to mention, they have Devin Williams and Isaiah Elohim, who came from USC, who was a Musselman recruit, who I believe Musselman actually recruited him to Arkansas, then took him with him to USC. He's another guy who was a top recruit in high school, top Hunter guy. Like, maybe there's pieces out the door because Baba Miller's a big one, and so was Trey Carroll going to Xavier because Trey Carroll was on those teams. He was on those Dusty May teams, and then he stuck it out last year and was a good player. You have those guys gone. There's a lot of new. I think it's a big time upside team. Yeah,
and you got Josiah Parker too, who's the preseason freshman of the year.
Freshman of the year. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's the teams in the middle kind of scare me because they could be great or they could be terrible.
And that's
of every conference nowadays, right?
Just comes with it. I want to touch on Wichita quickly. I'll let you say anything that you want. They're losing quite a bit too. They lose Xavier Bell, who once upon a time
ball player
played at Drexel University, University City, not far from us. They're bringing in with this Wichita team, bringing in Dylan Batee from Temple, transferring in conference. 2 new centers, actually 3 of them, if you want to count who's going to be backing up at center here. So they bring in Jared Valencia from Monmouth, who's a very good player in his own right there. Will Berg, the big fella from Purdue, who just kind of fell out of favor. There was Daniel Jacobson that had gotten hurt there. And then there's Trey Kaufman-Wren inside. And then this year, Daniel Jacobson's back healthy. Trey Kaufman-Wren is back. And they recruited Oscar Cluffin, who I think is going to be a monster inside for Purdue. And then they're going to back up Will Berg with Manny Okorafor, who played on a really dreadful Seton Hall team last year. So there's pieces here. They lose a lot. Look, Will Berg's a big guy. I don't know if Will Berg's as big as Quincy Ballard, who they lost, who just swatted everything.
Yeah, he was a beast
at the rim. This is a very important year for Paul Mills.
Absolutely.
The last year was a bit of a disappointment. We saw them go on the road to Temple. Temple beat them. Quincy Ballard actually he threw down one of the best lobs I think I've ever seen. Absolutely wicked. I mean, his arm was like literally straight all the way back. He cocked this thing back and dunked it. But 19-15, lost to Oklahoma State in the first round of the NIT. A very, very important year for Paul Mills, LT. Do you think it's still a top 5 team, though? Even with all the volatility, you don't really know who's who at this point. Do you think this is still a top 5 team? Because like I said, the wins, this is a place with a lot of money and a lot of tradition.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And that's the thing you would think with all the money, and I don't know what their NIL is. But Giles is a ball player. Are they a top 5 team? Yeah, Paul Mills is that good as a coach. But, you would think they would be 1 or 2 in NIL with the amount of money and pedigree Wichita State has. I don't know if they'd have or not. If they have, he hasn't spent it well. I think Paul Mills is a great coach. But he's not retaining players, and that tells me something. They just don't have the NIL to keep players.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. And I know during the offseason when we were doing our interview with Shiz Austin Jr. and talking about Temple's on NIL, I think around that same day or same week, Wichita State put out a statement saying that they were looking for, what was it, Cope, like $500,000 more, $1 million, whatever it was.
Oh, it was $1 to $2 million.
$1 to $2 million.
They basically said like that's the gap between us and a Sweet 16 team. Ooh. But they have the fan base, they have the tradition, the history. Like,
oh my God!
Even with a school with no football, I firmly believe if you rallied the boosters enough, they could get that money. Like I think that's a job where you have everything you need to be successful there.
Yeah. Especially, they can be a perennial contender in this conference.
They should be.
They should be up there with Memphis, to be quite honest.
They should be up there with Memphis every year. This Wichita State, and it's not a knock on Paul Mills, but I just think you have everything in place. You should be a perennial top team in this every single year.
It comes back to NIL. It's like, can you win in the boardroom? Can you win on the hardwood, on the court, and can you win in the boardroom? Meaning, can you get in front of the big boosters and the big companies to spend the money? And I think a lot of schools have trouble with that because, it's the cart before the horse. And, you might have X amount of dollars and, you miss because there's a lot of variables. It's like throwing darts. And, in this whole NIL transfer portal era, it's like throwing darts. I mean, for every, one kid that's successful, 10 are not. 10 you never hear about. We talk about the 1 or 2 kids that are so successful, or 5 or 10, but what about the 1,000 others that, like we talked to a whole bunch of them. Who knows if they're going to be good or not? I hope so for their sake, but there's just a lot of variables.
You just never know. It's a very hard thing to do. And that's why we are sitting here talking about it. And there's people who are getting paid a lot of money to make those decisions and not us. So,
Kyle, I can tell you one thing I do know. It's going to be cold tomorrow. I'm going to wear pants.
I think that makes 3 of us on here. Absolutely.
That's good to know.
All right, LT, one final thought from you as we wrap up this American preview. Any sleeper, anything else that we might have missed, but what's one final thing you got to say about the American or Temple even as well?
I think Temple's going to win 20 games. I think Adam Fisher is going to work his magic. I don't think on paper they have the names like they did with Lynn Greer and Jamal Mashburn, but you see teams all the time. They might not have the flash and the sizzle, but they just get it done. And I think this is a meat and potatoes team. I will say USF is going to surprise some people. USF and North Texas are going to surprise some people. And I think there's going to be some surprise with Tulane too. So those are the 3 that I think are going to surprise people. We'll just pick 3. Better odds, better chances. Tell that.
Listen, we're talking about throwing darts at the dartboard. That'll get it done. Cope, any final thoughts from you as well before we sign off here?
Yeah, well, maybe it's not an official ballot for me, but I will say that I do think that Temple's going to stick to that 9th place preseason coaches poll.
Ouch.
Rating. Well, no, here's the thing, LT. Like, sure, it might seem low, but here's another important thing to remember about this year. Teams 11, 12, and 13 are not going to make the conference tournament.
Yeah.
They're enacting that this year.
Do you like that?
No. I think some of the great stories in the tournament are when teams get a new lease on life.
Yep.
After, no matter what happens to you, get one last shot at it.
Like Temple 2 years ago, they would not have made the championship game under this new format.
No. Yeah,
they would have made the tournament.
It's unfortunate that didn't happen, but then at the same time, it only puts that much more stress on the regular season. And I think you could get more, crazier games and more tightly contested games. And it's almost like a relegation, product, because it's like there's really only a couple small leagues like the America East that do it that way.
Yeah.
The Big Ten do it, and then they took it right back, and every team's going to make it this year. So I think it will make some more entertaining basketball. But I'm going to put Temple. I'm going to keep them right at that 9th spot where they will make the conference tournament. But there's just so much new here. There's 2 guys that they're bringing back. That's
8.
And
8.5.
Honestly, I guess what, Luke? There's so many new players here, and there's so many new coaches. Does this mean I'm looking like this doesn't mean anything? The preseason poll does not mean anything. Go win it on the court, but so much new. I don't think they have they don't have a Mashburn on this team like they did last year. There's a lot of new. We're gonna have to see how the pieces fit. Just don't think this is maybe the talent wise team that it would and could have been last year. So I'm gonna put them at 9th for now. I don't think I was higher on them last year going into last season, but a lot of new. I'm going to put them at 9. They'll make the conference tournament in my eyes. We'll see how this goes. I'm more in the Big 5. I'm most intrigued to see this team because there's so much new about it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of new with a lot of teams, but I think roster-wise, this is the most question marks of any Big 5 team. So, I'm gonna put them 7th where Ken Pom has them, but anywhere in that 7 and 9 range, I think, is where they'll end up.
So we got 7, 8, and 9.
Yeah, and let's keep it that way so there's not a 6, 7 meme that's put in here, please.
Oh, Jesus.
You mentioned it, not me. I wasn't going to bring it up. We have that's enough internet from everybody.
Yeah,
we have Jay Lucas that's going to drop tomorrow from University of Miami, Florida, and I flat out asked him how many teams are going to make the the ACC into the NCAA tournament. He said 6, 7. So I didn't say it. I just went like this, and they're laughing. I'm like, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it.
So funny.
Because I've got kids. I got young kids, and they do this crap, and then 42 and all this garbage. I'm just like, whatever, man.
The brain rot is second to none on the internet always. But Luke Taylor, thank you so much for coming on here. Your podcast is not brain rot. Your podcast is very informative. So everybody should go check that out. Full Court Podcast, Coach's Show. But thank you again for coming on, talking American basketball, boys. Temple basketball. We very much appreciate it, and very much appreciate everybody tuning in here as well. A couple more conference and team previews to go, as well as the Big Five preview. So stay tuned for the rest of preview week as we lead into the NCAA tournament. Not the NCAA tournament, the NCAA season starting on Monday. We'll get to the NCAA tournament at some point. But until then, we'll see you.